Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I'm thrilled to welcome the authors of Amatulo, Chronicles of an Argentine Hustler, Sebastian Sas and Ilan Greenfield. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Well, we have a lot to cover, but I like to always start interviews by going back. So I want to go back with each of you. So I like to find out where you were born and what was your family life like, especially with regard to Judaism. So Sebastian, let's start with you.
Sure. So I'm originally from Argentina, Buenos Aires specifically. Judaism and my family. So I cannot help but connect my Judaism with my grandparents, and on my father's side, Holocaust survivors.
Oh, were they? Okay.
Yeah. So
from where?
My grandpa's story, even more dramatic, Kielce from Poland. So his village was notorious for having a huge pogrom after the war in 1946. And my grandpa was probably one of the few, so that ensured that no further Jews were left in Kielce after the war. So he was one of 10, and I think he had one nephew that survived, or the widow of one. So yeah, they were all killed. And my grandma, she was from, I can't pronounce this, Lvov in Poland, so it's now part of Ukraine. And yeah, she was one of 5. So definitely, we mentioned this in the book, and, I quote Amos Oz, I once heard him describe Israelis as, sharing 5 key Jewish sensibilities that were not exclusively Jewish. And I think that very much connects me with Judaism in general. I went to Jewish schools, I went to Jewish high school for a long time, but I always think of humor, skepticism, a touch of anarchism, distrust of authorities, and utopian desire to redo the world. I think those are commonalities among Jews that we very much share.
Were you religious at all growing up, observant at all, or no?
No. We were fairly secular, but so that was one side, but they definitely push, and many teachers that we had, I got back in touch with a high school teacher who's in Israel now, he was a Zionist, and he really pushed for the Jewish identity, and he really did a good job at letting us know that any sort of assimilation was meant that the Nazis won. So there was a lot of guilt about ensuring that we stayed Jewish.
I'm curious, did your grandparents discuss the Holocaust with you? Because they did. Okay.
Well, so I had 2 sides. So my grandma spoke very openly about it and all the time, and I can repeat all her stories, and I recorded, I translated some of her videos in YouTube, and you could see her directly telling the story with subtitles. And my grandpa would never talk about the experiences, and so at some point, thanks to the Spielberg Foundation, they were interviewed when they were visiting in New York, but my grandpa didn't used to talk much about it, but I do know their stories. Yeah.
Well, Ilan, what about you? Where did you grow up, and what was your family life like?
Well, I grew up here in Ecuador, which is, that's where I'm right now. And Ecuador is, a small country here in South America. My father, he's Jewish, and I went every year. I go visit my grandmother, who's Jewish from New York. I was born in New York, actually.
Oh, where around?
In Hempstead.
Long Island.
Yeah, Long Island. And then basically, but when I was like, I don't know, several months, we came to Ecuador, and I lived here since the whole time. Then I went to college in the States. But my Jewishness comes from obviously my father's side, and my great my great grandparents, they were lucky not to be in the Holocaust. They came earlier, and they got to the States earlier. My great grandfather he left with his brother alone, and they got out of and it must have been a program in Poland, and they decided to leave on their own. And actually yeah, and then they got to Paris, and then my great grandfather went to New York he must have been like 13 or 14. He must have been really on some boat. And my great uncle or his brother stayed in France, and they didn't see each other for, I don't know how, after the war and everything, like things got worse, and then they stayed, and then they didn't see each other for many years. And finally, after like, I don't know, 30 years, they reunited, and it was a very important moment. But their family, yeah, most of them perished during the war.
Well, you each have separate books there for both.
Yeah. Super interesting stories.
So when did you move from New York back to Ecuador?
Well, I was a kid because my father came to live here. He married my mom, and they lived here in Ecuador. And my father, he's an ornithologist, so he studies birds, and Ecuador is really important for birds. Mm-hmm. So he stayed here. He loves it here, and yeah, they basically raised me here. But I went to the States, and I went to an American school here in Quito. So that's why my English is decent. But I did live along. Yeah, I mean, I lived here I was basically raised here. And then I went to the States for college. And then I came back with my wife and kids, and because it's a nice country, it's really relaxed. Although
I heard it is actually.
The news, you'd think it's like the most dangerous place on earth, but I don't feel that.
You don't feel it, I know. So growing up, when did you each take an interest in writing? I mean, and even more importantly, I guess, when did you each discover that you had a talent for it? Sebastian, we can start with you, I guess. So again,
let's start with Ilan. Let's start with Ilan.
Okay.
Well, because I'm a musician, actually. I started. I wanted that, and that I've always linked to my Jewishness too, because I play the violin. Mm-hmm. I've always played the violin. It was weird because my mom was like, "You should not choose the violin because you're gonna like, I don't know, crack the window or whatever. It's like, choose anything else." And I was like, no, I want to play the violin. And I played it really well since I grabbed it. Like my parents tell me, like, you never really played a wrong note. And I've always equated, because, there's a lot of Jewish music with violin. And then later on in life, I've come to discover that klezmer music and all this. So I've always had like this inkling towards, the arts, music. And around like 16 years old, I started getting into writing. And then I remember I used to write like stories, sort of ridiculous stories. I used to have fun with it. And then in college, I went for music, but then I changed my major. And that's when I decided that I wanted to write. So yeah, I'm actually an editor of a magazine here in Ecuador.
What's it called? Non magazine?
Nyan, yeah. It sounds like not like the bread, like the Indian bread. But Nyan here, it's like it's an indigenous word that means road. And okay. we have a tourism. It's a tourism, so it's basically where the road takes you, and like it's a tourism magazine. And yeah, it's in English and Spanish. And yeah, basically that's what I've been doing for many years. But I've always kept.
What does the magazine do? What does the magazine cover?
It's tourism, so it really covers like, but it's tourism only about Ecuador. So it really covers like, different places to go, and like the stories of, like the indigenous people, and also the history, and like, so it's actually a really fun thing for a writer, because we got to write about a lot of things, and I'm the editor, so I have like a staff and everything. So it's good. I've been doing that for 20 odd years, a little less, but I've been doing it for a while.
And so, growing up, you weren't really into. Were you into writing also? Then growing up, or no?
When I was little, no, it was all music. It was all music. It's raining like crazy here, but it was all music. And then I started getting into writing when I went to college. That's when it clicked. I was around 15, 16 when I started writing stories, and then in college I started writing.
Oh, getting more serious.
Yeah.
Well, while I'm talking to you, before I get to Sebastian, I also want to hear about the band, the Swing Original Monks. Could you tell me about that too?
Yeah, because I'm a musician, so we started a band here. It's a very crazy, very eclectic. Musically, it's very eclectic. We do a lot of things. Like our idea is basically no song is the same. All the songs are different genres, and it's really crazy. It's obviously in Spanish. But it's I don't know, you can check it out in with Spotify or YouTube. We have things there. So it's called Swing Original Monks, which is weird here in Ecuador because it should be a Spanish name, but people don't care and they like the name. So it goes. We do okay. It's not, we're not. The thing with Ecuadorian music is that it doesn't really have a global people don't acknowledge our music. Basically, people don't know that we're a country that actually has bands and stuff. But here in Ecuador, we're kind of known, I would say. People, we fill our.
Ilan, you can say you're the most famous band in Ecuador.
No, I don't think we are.
Are we fact checking this?
Oh.
Maybe we're the fourth or fifth.
After this, Swing Original Monks will be climbing up the Spotify charts.
Yes, I hope so. This is the moment.
Right. So, Sebastian, what about you? What was your writing interest as growing up?
So I think as a child, I always liked reading. I'm sure Ilan did too. I always loved humor and writing, and I remember loving writing as a kid, and maybe winning some essay contest in elementary school, and then hearing those. Sorry, I'm gonna use this as therapy. I hope you don't mind, but. Hearing those mandates from the family saying, well, nice hobby, but I hope you do something that will earn money and, you don't get any crazy ideas in your head, because, well, what sort of lifestyle do you want to have anyway? So I think I self-censored many of these creative interests and instincts, and I went into, I studied finance and business, and I worked for large corporations. But I always, I always had this interest. So over 20 years ago, I connected with a few friends, and we started publishing a tango magazine in New York. And so very much like Nian, it was also bilingual, and it came as a shock to me that, frankly, my wife really got into tango. She's French. And typically Argentinians don't get into tango, at least, well, I'm stereotyping, never mind. I wasn't into tango. I had Argentinian friends that were really into tango. I learned that there were at least 2-3 different places to dance tango every day of the week in New York. There was a huge community. It's like a sect almost. And I was the editor. I was the key person translating the articles and writing, and I use it as an excuse to, express myself and leverage some of my creative interest. And but ultimately, Amatulo gave me the biggest excuse to express my creative my writing interest.
The magazine is called it's ReporTango.
ReporTango, yes. And frankly, it's no longer published. I don't know if the website is still around, but a key friend that was the main editor is no longer with us, but he was a huge driver behind it. Carlos Quiroga. Yeah.
What made you decide to start a magazine just dedicated to tango?
So our friends were really into tango. Like, so our key partners, Carlos Quiroga and Pamela Saichan, and my wife, Ann Sas. So the four of us, it started as a fun hobby. We realized that there was an interest out there. Like some of us saw it as a business opportunity, and they were looking for a way to make money in the city. Some of us saw it as a creative outlet. I realized that I always loved tango. There's a nostalgia about living Argentina and then hearing a tango, and it hits you hard. So it was a great opportunity to like delve into the lyrics. We got to interview like tango dancers who were visiting. Our key friend Carlos Quiroga, his sister is one of the most famous tango dancers in Argentina. She was with Tango Argentina, every single Broadway show that came to New York, she was part of it at some point. So we had connections with the tango community, and basically it was a good opportunity to get into this, and we loved it.
There's a Jewish movie, I think Shalom Tango, that's based all around that too. Which was so odd to me when I saw it, but so that's why it amused me when I saw your magazine too, because it was like the second thing I've seen with associating Jews with tango. So
there was a movie, and I can't remember. I remember the name of one of the dancers, Pablo Verón, and so there was a director. I think she was European, but she made also this connection between Judaism and tango. Yeah, I can't recall the name of the movie, but great movie. And also, she made all these parallels between Judaism and tango, and she was of Jewish descent. And I think Pablo Verón, also a big dancer, he's also Jewish. But so again, none of them are specifically about Judaism, right, but it's embedded in there.
Yeah. So how did the two of you initially meet? Because you're in different countries. So how did this happen?
Ilan, you're muted, but I'm sure you're giving a great answer.
Yes.
No, yeah, I was muted because of this crazy storm that just hit us here. No, the reason is basically the book.
Amatulo.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, so the
united us and him, and obviously the person who this book is about.
Well, all right, so that doesn't explain how you met, though. How did you?
Well, I think I keep remembering, but I think we met, and I don't know. We must have met in New York at some point, because I definitely remember that. But
yeah, for sure.
Was very, very brief. We were both friends with Amatulo, the Argentine Hustler.
The inspiration behind the book. Yes.
The inspiration behind the book, and basically we sort of knew of each other because we're both close with him. But then I came back to Ecuador, and I didn't see much of Amatulo, yes, and then when we got back into communicating when the project of Sebastian was already like very much underway.
So my story is, so we met, maybe 20 plus years ago, when Amatulo was going to college. Mm-hmm. And Ilan was a college friend of Amatulo.
Yeah.
And I knew Amatulo from high school and from Argentina. And Amatulo introduced us. And then I think maybe 20 years later, I started researching the book as if it would be a piece of like nonfiction. And I tried to research this, very thoroughly, interviewing former girlfriends, former bosses, friends from all stages in life, his parents. There were many people. Among the many people that I connected with was Ilan, and he was one of the most effusive, kind, sharing people about Amatulo, the best at describing scenes and explaining things. And as part of my obsession, I think, maybe 4 years later, the real Amatulo tells me, Ilan is an editor too, right? And he's a writer. And because I said, I think I need help with this book and I need somebody to help me edit the book. And he said, why don't you contact Ilan? And I reached out to him, and against his better judgment, he said, sure, let's do this. And I think so I had worked independently on this for maybe 5 years, and then with Ilan for another year plus. And we're still working on the translation together to Spanish. So it's.
So Sebastian, you were originally working on the book, and then Ilan, you came in afterwards.
Yeah, much later. It was already pretty much structured, and all of the information was there. But what happened was that there were like things that I felt like could be joined differently, and like it was sort of, and we sort of worked together, and everything was sort of like, we revamped certain things and made it sort of like work. And then basically at one point he wanted to include me in the story. Like he wanted me to be part of the.
I think it happened more organically. I think it's a true collaboration, and I think like we started the book saying at one point I think I get lost of who said what, and
then later it just became a whole.
Yes.
Everybody was this, but the moment that I was sort of invited to be like, okay, I think you should write these parts where you were in college with him, so I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I started doing that, and then we sort of, then it became a very much
So
and just to note something, I mean, I think the book, and I heard this definition recently, is truly a hybrid. It's tough for me to say, well, this is, it's not pure fiction, but it's not just a memoir. It's not nonfiction also either. It's truly a hybrid. Probably the craziest parts of the book are all real. So that's why.
But you wouldn't believe it was like real.
All right. So tell me about the real Amatulo, what the book is about a little bit.
Yeah. You wanna go ahead?
So I'll start. So the book is about many things. I almost feel that I'm using Amatulo as an excuse, but like the core story is about this guy who was a hustler in Argentina. He wasn't really clear in about what his path in life would be. He wasn't really into academics. He tried like 1,000 different things. Ethics didn't seem like a priority in his life. Anyway, and one day the true story is like one day he calls me, I'm in the US, and he tells me, what do I need to do to go to college in the States? I'm in my mid-20s. By then, I graduated. I'm like, what is he talking about? So I give him some of the basics, well, you need essays.
But you didn't believe he could ever go to the States because he spoke English in a way that was not, you couldn't even like cross the border. Like, I mean, it's like.
He never spoke much English, and anyway, so I give him the basics, and then he tells me, no, you know what? I don't think I'm going to have to do any of that. The family that will pay for my studies will take care of everything.
Like,
and I'm like, what is he talking about? Like also very naive on my part. I'm like, well, I don't care how much money they have. He'll probably need to do the SATs, like I thought things like that. But anyway, and he tells me, and again, I'm fictionalizing. Does the name Z tell you anything? Like, so he gives him his name that sounds like he's like one of the wealthiest, most famous people in the world. And I'm like, why would anybody like this want to not just pay for his studies, but invite them to their home in Westchester, or like invite them to their house in the Hamptons, like what, and so a few months later, he's studying in the U.S., he's living in the U.S., he's like having breakfast with Mandela and like meeting like all these celebrities. And I would send emails to our common friends in Argentina. I would tell them, listen to the latest. I mean, I can't believe who Amatulo is hanging out with. I would go back to Argentina and people would tell me, oh my gosh, do you have more stories about this? And I said to Amatulo, listen, this is a book. This is incredible. Like, we need to write this. This was about 30 years ago. And he told me, yeah, go ahead. you're right. Like, of course, he wasn't going to write anything, but he was very generous in sharing the stories. And every year he would ask me, "So, how are we doing with the writing? When is the book coming out?" And it took me over 26 years to get started, but I'm glad to finally have it out there.
All right. So how did you both meet this person to begin with? I mean,
well, I met him in college because he went to, he went the college that he was supposed to go, like that he was asking Sebastian to how he would get to it, how he could apply.
right.
That college was the college I was in, so that's how I met him, and we became instantly friends. Like, it was like the second we met, we were like best friends, best buddies. Like that, we hung out all the time, and that's how I got to know him. Yeah.
But you can say how exactly. I mean, I assume the book, that part feels very much like nonfiction. Like, how exactly did he connect with you? Like, how did he ask you for help?
It was like in the college we were at. We had this, like, I guess you have that in all colleges, but it's, where you register for the classes, and it was just this big mess, and you had to like go. And he came up to me, he was like, "I don't understand anything. I don't I mean, he spoke very, very rudimentary English, and please help me get through this." And I was like, "Okay, I'll help you get through this." And that's what happened. And we just like went around, and I helped him. I talked to the teachers with him, and like he just said, "Okay, I'll take this class. I'll take flamenco." And I was like, "Flamenco? Why are you going to take flamenco?" And he's like, "Oh, I'll take it." And he was taking
So he was an economics major.
He was an economics major, and he was taking classes, and he would be like, "I'll take that class," and I was talking to the teacher, and he was like, "Just get me into this one," because I think he felt like he wasn't gonna, it was just too much for him. He just wanted to get into classes and then like figure it out later or something.
Right.
He was a very, very, I mean, he's an amazing character, and he's just somebody who's very, very quick on his feet, you could say.
Okay.
And that's how.
Okay, so
Sorry, and I went to high school with him. So I met him when he was around 12 years old, and I spent like 5 years of secondary school or high school together.
So, but pointing it to using the word hustler in the title, it implies at least that there may have been like some not always legal, events. So it's just so would that be an accurate statement of Amatulo?
I mean, so first of all, I want to encourage people to read the book, and I don't want to give it away. So, yes. So there were, again, there was a lot of flexibility, and so frankly, it wasn't just Amatulo, and part of my crazy ambition with the book is also to describe Argentina for non-Argentinians, as well as describe, some craziness that is in the U.S. culture after living for so long in the U.S. for non-Americans. But, like when I arrived to my high school, I thought I am studying with like ex-cons, like I'm like people here just like I had to watch out for like that they won't rob me, and like we would go eat and people would look for the way to get a free meal out of it and avoid paying. So people in general had a sense of like everybody seemed to be hustling, and I was in shock. I'm like, these are Jews, these are Argentinians. Like, where is their sense of ethics? But anyway, I'm telling the story as I see it. So yes, definitely there were parts in Amatulo's life, maybe many parts where I think the line between con and genius, can be slim.
So well, there's a thing about it, just to like about him as a character, is that it's probably never really illegal. It's always just right on the line. He's and it's very, very like that. That's how he. I mean, it's a very thin line. And he's a very smart. And in the end, the question was, and the way it was because of the hustler part, is that how did he get to where he got? Like, how did he do that? How did he do that transition from somebody who didn't even care about anything, and sort of that's what the story talks about.
What made you decide that, hey, this person would make a great book? When did that first start coming into your mind that like this would be a great write about?
But again, for me, it was close to 30 years ago.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, when again, this guy so he used to wear this T-shirt like he bought in Florida that said "World's Greatest Grandpa." He was 16, and he was convinced that the T-shirt meant like, I'm the coolest guy in the world. Like he didn't know he had studied English, but he didn't know that grandpa, meant grandfather. I mean, he thought it meant like cool guy, and I pointed out to him, so his English was like non-existent. Fast forward 2-3 years, and he's like sending me a picture, like saying cheers with Bono, in Ireland. Like he is connected to. The president of the U.S. at the time was, eating at their house. I mean, he's connected with all these people. I'm like, of all the people in the world that like could be where he is, like he would have been the last one. So he was like such a fish out of water. I mean, I always loved like the Mendigo Millonario, from Pauper to King, like all these stories of Cinderella type stories. And I never found one in real life. And all of a sudden, I have a friend of mine who's living this, like it seems like a fantasy. And I'm like, this is completely true. And I'm like, I need to share it with more people than just like the 5 friends that I'm sending emails to. So I think that's when the impulse came in.
How did the collaboration process work between the two of you? Again, because you're like separate states, and I know it's easier, not states, countries. It's easier now because of, electronic Zoom and email and stuff. But how did it work? Did you each look over chapters as you're writing, or you each like just give input and one would write? How did it work?
Well, I had Sebastian's like basic, the whole what he had written, which was a lot. I mean, it was.
My 38th draft,
and it was actually I think actually Sebastian, you sent me a draft like 6 years prior, and then you sent me this one, which was very, very different, and it had changed. The story had changed a little because the story, and to me it sounded it was even more interesting, the second version, because the first one was more about just Amatulo's life, and the second one was the story of someone who meets Amatulo and cannot believe this, which is basically, I think, I mean, I don't want to give it away, but I think it's close to somebody like Sebastian himself. And he's like, in the story, he goes crazy because he can't believe that this person, the least, likely to make it, was making it, and he who actually followed all the rules and did everything the way he was supposed to, was not able to. And then that story, that dichotomy, I guess, that situation where somebody's like living the life, and then the other one is totally like obsessed by the story about this person who's done this. That story to me intrigued me. That story was very intriguing. So then that's when I started reading it in a different way. And then we decided to work together by, I guess I wrote parts, I changed things, and I would send it to Sebastian so that he could, approve of them and see if they worked for him. And then we worked that way for a while. And I think until we got to the end, and then we were like, okay, I think this is done.
and we changed roles quite a bit, because at one point, like, Ilan was being the editor and maybe
that was what I was
cleaning up. And then next thing I know, I'm being the editor of Ilan, and I'm like, I'm wordsmithing and driving him crazy about like a comma. And so so fortunately at one point I realized, I'm like, yeah, poor Ilan has contracted my obsession too, and we're both spending way more time than we had expected on this. But the truth is, like, I think it gave us, it wasn't. I think it went beyond just Amatulo's story. Like some of the parts that I love, or one of the things that I really enjoy about the book is that Amatulo gave me access maybe to see how the 0.0001% live. One of the, and realizing that this is like obvious, and it might be like one of this, money can buy love. Like just to hear the problems that people have that you cannot solve with money, or like the problems that money alone can raise. So to me, that was also very interesting to see, well, not everything that shines is gold, and to feel some empathy or sympathy for some people that you think, wow, they have it all.
Mm-hmm.
The real Amatulo is still around, I'm assuming, correct?
He's still around. He's still our friend. He was very generous, not only in sharing the stories, but in saying, wow, maybe the book doesn't portray me in the best light at all times, but yet I'm perfectly fine with you guys.
That's what I was going to ask. How much pressure is it on the two of you you have a real person that you're still writing about, and you want to try to capture it accurately, and you still have to sort of get permission, maybe in a way, from the person. So how difficult was that as you're writing it?
I don't think we thought about it while we were writing it, but then at the end we were like, okay, I think we're gonna have to show this to people before we actually. And I think that was up to Sebastian. I didn't.
No. Well, I mean, frankly, the reason why
it was not only him, it was also other people involved that you didn't want to, that you were a little.
Well, I mean, that's what I wanted to share also. Like, multiple thoughts. One, there are many friends involved with the story. Everybody is based in either one or multiple real. Everybody's a real person, and we share a lot about like very, very real people. But what I wanted to say was that I love Ilan getting involved, just bringing that possible deniability, and just like the worst thing, saying this was all Ilan's fault, and I'm blameless. So.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because usually with authors, like I do that. If I'm going to write about a friend, I don't use their names, and I can say, no, it's not you. When it is them, you didn't do that. you both.
Oh, we did do that for the names, right?
Okay.
I think we did.
What? The name, but
names,
but the truth is, like, it's so easy. Like I got a WhatsApp recently saying, "Hey, I'm X. It's been a long time, but for you, I am Rosanna in the book." So people
are identifying.
Yeah. We're having some interesting conversations. Yes.
So, do the two of you plan on collaborating again in the future?
We haven't talked about it, but there's another. I think Sebastian. We are doing it right now. I mean, we are doing it. Yes. We are translating the book to Spanish. So the original book has been written in English, and we borrowed or stole from many people who inspired us, and frankly, one of them for me has been Junot Diaz, who daringly throws in words in Spanish and Klingon in his work. So it's in English, but we throw some Yiddishisms and Hebrew and Spanish in the book. But I think it's still very legible and easy to read. But what makes it quite challenging to translate as well. It's not something that you can just do with AI and have it neatly translated. So we're putting some serious work into translating it. So hopefully in a few months, the Spanish version will be ready.
Let's hope so. Before I do let you go, just curious now, this is just, for me, I'm curious about, you both live, Sebastian, you're in Argentina now?
Well, no. I lived in the U.S. for over 20 years, and for the last 12 or so, I've been in Costa Rica.
And Ilan, you're in Ecuador. So I'm just curious, how are things now? Because I see all the news in different countries. So how are things for Jews in each of the places that you live now?
That is a broad question.
Yeah, things are okay here. There's not much of a backlash from what but there's not a big community.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small community of Jews, but yeah, I don't know how it is in Costa Rica. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, it is also fairly small, but also I've been happily impressed. Like, there are also multiple synagogues here. We're careful in every synagogue. Like, we receive the requests from Israeli embassies, etc., not to be displaying Jewish symbols very openly, just to be careful. And I think growing up in Argentina, I faced this. I mean, just to speak very much about current events, I mean, definitely something that marked Amatulo's life, mine, and so and maybe some justice is happening currently. Was like Iran was one of the key people involved in the AMIA bombing, Argentina, back in the 90s, and so now the bombing of the Ayatollahs, whatever, feels like maybe some justice is being done. So some and I specifically say this because A, it's in the book, and B, so we had like two very close friends that were classmates that were killed in that bombing. So it just feels
So
justice is being done.
So we'll get back to the book. The book is out now. The book is available now.
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So everyone has to go make sure to go buy it. How can people follow the two of you on social media?
Good question.
Well, I mean, we have one account specifically for the book, and it's Amatulo Book altogether. So you can find it in Instagram and Facebook, and it leads you to. But and it has a bunch of funny pictures. So the book is going around the world. So we've had some fun pictures of it, and so from Europe to Korea to Argentina. So it's traveling. I would argue that the cover is very photogenic. So it's we're having fun seeing the pictures.
And how about individual accounts? Do you want to give a shout to your individual social media or no?
I really don't have much of a social media.
we are yes, we are. We're old people who are like daringly going with the Amatulo Book. Yeah, I'm happy with the public one with Amatulo. Yes.
Fair enough. Well, I thank you both for coming on today. A pleasure getting to speak with both of you. I know we had canceled once before. I apologize, but I'm glad we were able to do this now. So do thank you both. And so again, the book is Amatulo. Make sure you get it. And again, this has been The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen. Again, a very special thanks to Sebastian Sas and Ilan Greenfield. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.